Welcome back, everyone. So, we will continue with the things that we're not able to discuss in the previous chapter, which is relationships with participants. So, we're still on data gathering topic. Having a clear and professional relationship and building rapport with participants increases the likelihood of a successful study. In many countries, participants must be given sufficient information about the project, the data that will be collected, and how the data is to be used for them to make an informed decision about their participation. This informed consent may be given in written form by signing document or orally via an audio or video recording. So you need to get consent, either audio or video recording or via document. The details of this form will vary, but it usually asks the participant to confirm that the purpose of the data gathering and how the data will be used has been explained to them and that they are willing to contribute. It explained that their data will be private and kept in secure place. It also often includes a statement that participants may withdraw at any time, and that in this case, none of their data will be used in the study. Building rapport with participants encourages them to participate in a relaxed manner. Building rapport in a remote setting has particular challenges, especially if the communication medium is limited, like audio only, so the participant can't be seen. Some of these challenges relate to missing body language and personal dynamics, and building trust takes longer if the people don't already know each other. So, since 2004, this remote communication does not build as much trust as face to face, because that's the reason why you need to be able to communicate well. So it's not an excuse if you do not know how to communicate via this collaboration tools, because it's so useful. It made our lives so much easier. So that's one of the benefits of technology. If you're not don't know how to do that, then you're gonna suffer the consequences. So I recommend you going back to my video about social collaboration. So yeah, how to build rapport and gain acceptance by participant communities differ across situations. For example, Peter Kolbach et al. 2021 described the communication conventions adopted between research teams and Dunkerbos San community in Nambia for a number of ongoing projects. This includes communications before arrival at the community and communications during visit that include meeting with local headman, community meetings to greet everyone and share progress related to ongoing projects, and a departure community meeting to review the visit. In their paper, they observed that this is important to build trust and also to understand differing social culture norms. Just sip my coffee, guys. So here is an informed consent for the recycle project. Please highlight your choice by clicking inside the appropriate box. I have read. So this is the normal questions that you would answer before interview. Um, Ethical consideration, we have discussed that. So I think we have discussed this. So we'll move to this audio plus photographs. Audio recording is a useful alternative to note taking and is less intrusive than video. During observations, it allows observers to focus on the activity rather than on trying to capture every spoken word. In an interview, it allows the interviewer to pay more attention to the interviewee rather than try to take notes as well as listening. So this is the advantage of audio plus photographs. It's not as intrusive as video, and you can transcribe this the audio after, but it could be a lot of work, especially if the information that you need on the entire interview is only a section. It isn't always necessary to transcribe all the data collected. Often, only sections are needed, depending on the goal of the study. Many studies do not need a great level of detail, and instead, recordings are used as a reminder and as a source of anecdotes for reports. Many video conferencing environments such as Zoom and Teams allow direct recording of a session, and some generate transcriptions, either as a live captions that are displayed in a side panel or as a transcription from the recording. The accuracy of transcription varies between the live captions and later transcription, but is pretty good at 80 to 90%. Accuracy is affected by background noise and the clarity and volume of the speaker's voice. The kind of automated captioning has made transcription much easier for researchers because they don't have to transcribe by hand from audio. Audio recordings are often supplemented with photographs. So this is the great knowledge. So most of the time, this audio are supplemented by photographs first. Second, useful knowledge is that it's if you have like some technical issue with transcribing, it's it goes both ways because the clarity and the volume of the speaker voice also determine that the background noise as well and the tech. So it's a multifaceted causes. Video, let me just sip my coffee. Smartphones can be used to collect short video clips of activity. They can be handheld and create good quality output, but sometimes a video is needed for long periods of time. In a lab study or a researcher can be present in the space, like in a trauma unit of hospital. In these cases, a dedicated recording device may provide a wider range of recording options, and the researcher won't have to concentrate on holding the phone. Several issues need to be considered when choosing and placing a camera. So this was started in just 2022. Deciding which camera to use. There are many options for video cameras, including wearable body cameras, 360-degree cameras, and standard camcorders. How many and which combination is best depends on the focus of the study. Wearable cameras allow filming of other participants' point of view, while a 360-degree camera captures the full context of activity. So in videos, most people believe that you can only capture in a certain point of view. At least I believe that before. So there are actually specialized, and I usually take videos using phones, but there's a specialized camcorders that allows you to record the 360 view, or a wearable body cameras that allows you to get a first person point of view, or you can angle the camera in different places depending on the theme or sections that you want to like emphasize in the video, if you have another person with you. Deciding whether to use fixed or flexible settings. A camera may be in a fixed location with constant angle and zoom settings, or it may be flexible with options to change the zoom and focus. The decision also depends on whether the researcher will remain in charge of the camera, physically present or remotely, or it will be left to record automatically. The thing here is that it requires a lot of cognitive load, even if you're just zooming in and zooming out, because it requires you to listen to actual interview and then know beforehand the topic that will be important that you would need to zoom in. Deciding where to point the camera in order to capture what is required. This is a key decision. It helps to plan the setup and camera locations in advance. If performing a study in the wild, it is beneficial to explore the likely activities and context for a short time before starting to video record in order to become familiar with the environment. So, uh, mm, So before starting the video, it's important to have a plan. So if you are like observing people in the wild, like you need to plan or the anticipate the activities that they may do while doing it in the wild so that you can position your camera properly. Understand the impact of the recording on participants. It is often assumed that video recording will have an impact on participants and their behavior. However, it is worth taking an empirical approach to this issue and examining the data itself to see whether there is any evidence of people changing their behavior, such as orienting themselves toward the camera. Garden planning is a highly visual aesthetic activity, so supplementing notes and sketches with photographs would be appropriate. Video captures more information, for example, continuous panoramas of the landscape, where garden ornaments and trees, what the designers are looking at, comments from the clients, and so on, and can be used by the designer as a reminder of the garden layout. But video capture is more intrusive and will also be affected by weather. Short video sequences recorded on a smartphone may be sufficient as the video is not going to be analyzed in detail. Audio plus photographs may be a good compromise, but synchronizing audio with activities such as looking at sketches and other artifacts later can be tricky and error prone. So remember this, guys. Whenever you're gathering large amounts of data, it is error prone, so it is useful to like always have this awareness of what you're trying to achieve. Like again, we're going back to the attention part, which states that knowing the goal is half of the battle. So again, so there's a disadvantage of getting this large amount of data. You may think that the more data you have, the better you get, or the more information you have, the better you get, but that's not necessarily true. So it's just because you have a lot of knowledge and information does not mean that you know how to prioritize your time, right? Another thing is that video clips is more important with gardening with this task is because it's a highly visual activity. So we'll go move on to interviews. Interviews can be thought of as conversation with a purpose. There are four main types of interviews: open-ended or unstructured, structured, semi-structured, and group interviews. The first three types are named according to how much control the interviewer imposes on the conversation by following a predetermined set of questions. The fourth type, which is often called a focus group, involves a small group guided by a facilitator. The facilitation may be quite informal or follow a structured format. Sorry. Uh, yeah. So unstructured interviews, it's open-ended or unstructured interviews are at one end of a spectrum of how much control the interviewer has over the interview process. Similar to conversations, they often go into considerable depth. Questions posed by the interviewer open, meaning that there is no particular expectation about the format or content of answers. For example, the first question asked of all participants may be, what are the advantages and disadvantages of using a wearable? Here, the interviewee is free to answer as fully as briefly as they want, and both the interviewer and interviewee can steer the interview. For example, often the interviewer will say, can you tell me a bit more about, this is referred to as probing. So after you ask this open-ended question, you usually ask probing to ask or to remove the ambiguity, to clarify the information you needed with respect to your goals of the interview. So you might think that this unstructured interview it's just like an open box, but it's actually not. There's a main theme where you will revolve or you will restrict the answer, because you have limited time, so you need to focus in one point at a time. Despite being unstructured and open, the interviewer need a plan of the main topics to be covered so that they can make sure that all of the topics are discussed. One of the skills needed to conduct an unstructured interview is getting the balance right between obtaining answers to relevant questions and being prepared to follow unanticipated lines of inquiry. A lot of unstructured data is generated, and the interviews will not be consistent across participants since each interview takes its own format. So, yeah, it's like a inductive and deductive way of analyzing qualitative data, which we will discuss in the next video. So for inductive way, you're trying to, like we've mentioned, I think we've mentioned in the last video, inductive is actually trying to get a strange or new information from the data that you've gathered. So you're trying to open for change for the requirements or the clear goals. You're open to that when new data arise. While deductive, you have this preconceived information or criteria where you will check the data against. So you will check that based on this known truths. So a lot of unstructured data is generated. So basically, because of the nature of this interview, you're gonna get a lot of like strange data that you didn't expect. So the format or the answers that you may not aware that related to your goals. So because of this, it takes a lot of time. Unstructured interviews can be time-consuming to analyze, but they can also produce rich insights. Themes can be identified across interviews using technique from grounded theory and other analytical approach, as discussed in chapter 9, which we will discuss in the next video. Structured interviews. In structured interviews, the interviewer asks a predetermined questions similar to those in a questionnaire. See section 8.5 questionnaires. And the same questions are used with each participant so that study is standardized. The question need to be short and clearly worded, and they are typically closed question, which means that they require an answer from a predetermined set of alternatives. This may include an other option, but ideally this would not be chosen often. Closed questions work well if the range of possible answers is known or if participants don't have much time. So it's similar to questionnaire, which we will discuss later, but it's mainly closed questions because it has like a predefined answer to its questions. Structured interviews are useful only when the goals are clearly understood and specific questions can be identified. Example questions for a structured interview might be the following. Which of the following apps do you use most frequently? Prime Video, Google TV, or Netflix? How often do you watch stream content? Every day, once a week, once a month, less often than once a month? Do you ever purchase anything online? Yes or no? If your answer is yes, approximately how often do you purchase things online? Every day, once a week, once a month, less frequently than once a month? Questions in a structured interviews are worded the same for each participant and asked in the same order. So it's kind of like the same questions in the same order. So you're trying to automate the process with this. So it's especially useful if both of you have less time, which often the case. Semi-structured interviews. The semi-structured interviews combine features of structured and unstructured interviews and use both closed and open questions. The interviewer has a basic script for guidance so that the same topics are covered with each interview. The interview starts with the pre-planned questions and then probes the interview to say more until no new relevant information is forthcoming. Here's an example. Which music websites do you visit most frequently? Interviewee mentions several but stresses that they prefer hottestmusic.com. Why? Says that they like the site layout. Interviewer, tell me more about the site layout. Silence followed by an answer describing the website. It describes the animation. Thanks. Are there any other reason for visiting this site? So there's a lot of open-ended question here, but it's predefined questions in one topic, which is music website that you visit. It's important to have an answer by placing a question to suggest that a particular answer is expected. For example, you seem to like this use of color. Assumes that this is the case and will probably encourage the interviewee to answer that this is true so as not to offend the interviewer. Children are particularly prone to behave in this way. The body language of the interviewer, for example, whether they are smiling, scowling, looking disapproving, and so forth, can have a strong influence on whether the interviewer will agree with the question, and the interviewee needs to have time to speak and not be rushed. So in data analysis, we will discuss how bias like this affect the entire conversation. So we've discussed in cognitive frameworks the effect of our environment. So this is another way of looking at it. So if the person are sad whenever you're trying to answer something, you will do your best not or answer the opposite of what you think is true, because you know that that will make that person happier. Probes are a useful device for getting more information, especially neutral probes such as "Do you want to tell me anything else?" and prompts that remind interviewers if they forget terms or names. Help to move the interview along. So these probes, like, "Do you want to tell me anything else?" Like, is there anything, any information that you like to talk about? Is there any other questions that you like to settle with? These questions are actually a great way to move the interview forward to the main topic, which is usually like customer providing unstructured data, any out of the box data that is related to the main goal of the interview or data gathering. Focus groups. One form of group interview that is sometimes used in interaction design activities is the focus group. Normally, 3 to 10 people are involved, and the discussion is led by a trained facilitator. Participants are selected to provide representative sample of target population. For example, in the evaluation of an interactive university campus map, a group of administrators, faculty, students, and potential visitor may form 3 separate focus groups because they use the map for different purpose. So this different department should be in different focus group because the topic is entirely not related to each other because of their demographics. So we will discuss this in data analysis on how, or questionnaires later, on how the history or the specific characteristics of people. We will also discuss this in gathering requirements chapter, wherein the personas are actually like the bread and butter of human to computer interaction design, because you're trying to optimize towards the people and the scenarios where you want to help them. The benefit of focus group is that it allows diverse viewpoints to be raised that might be otherwise missed. For example, in the requirements activity, to understand multiple points with a collaborative process or to hear different user stories. The technique is appropriate for investigating shared issues rather than individual ones, and participants are encouraged to put forward their own perspectives. A present agenda is developed to guide the discussion, but there is sufficient flexibility for the facilitator to follow unanticipated issues as they raise. So this is usually for a group like problem, not an individual one. So you're trying to get a main problem similar to each member. The facilitator guides and prompts discussion, encourages quiet people to participate, and stop verbose ones from dominating the discussion. The discussion is usually recorded for later analysis, and participants may be invited to explain their comments more fully at a later date. The downside of focus group is that they require careful facilitation in order to keep on track, and they can suffer from groupthink, where people get sidetracked by one or two participants' opinions. It was recognized a long time ago that they should not be the only source of information about user behavior. Planning and conducting interview. Planning an interview involves developing the set of questions or topics to be covered, collating any documentation to give to the interviewee, such as consent form and project description, checking that recording software and equipment works, structuring the interview, and organizing suitable time and location. If the interview is in person, bringing snacks and drinks can help relax environment. So it's about planning, structuring, about preparing the kind of interviews, the equipments, the questions, and so forth. Developing interview questions. Long or compound questions can be difficult to remember or confusing, so split them into separate questions. For example, instead of how do you like this smartphone app compared with previous ones that you used, say, how do you like the smartphone app? Have you used smartphone apps? If so, how did you like them? This is easier for the interview to respond to, and easier for the interviewer to record. Interviewees may not understand jargon or complex language and might be too embarrassed to admit it. So explain things to them in straightforward ways. Try to keep questions neutral, both when preparing the interview script. So basically, let's back up a little bit with long compound questions. So you should not ask two or more questions, like for example, instead of how do you like the smartphone app compared with previous one that you use, say, how do you like this smartphone app? And then, have you used other smartphone apps? If so, how did you like them? How did you don't assume, like ask one question at a time. Interviewees may not understand jargon or complex language, so don't use jargon, guys. Like make sure the information that you're telling to the customer is actually things that they know. Okay, so you have to do the homework with your interviewees, because you're like borrowing their time. Try to keep questions neutral, both when preparing the interview script and conversation during the interview itself. For example, if you ask, why do you like this style of interaction? This question assumes that the person does like it and will discourage some interviewers from stating their real feelings. The developers of a new device of reading ebooks want to find out how appealing it will be to young people aged 14 to 16, so they have decided to conduct some interviews. So these are the questions. What is the goal of this data gathering section? Suggest ways of capturing the interview data. Suggest a set of questions. So this is our activity. So the goal is to understand what makes device for reading books appealing to people aged 14 to 16. So that's the goal. Audio recording will be less cumbersome and distracting than taking notes, and all the important points will be captured. Video recording is not needed in this initial interview, as it isn't necessary to capture any detailed interactions. However, it would be useful to take photographs of any devices referred to by interviewee. So photographs is useful. Video will be too irritating because It's just an initial interview. Possible questions include the following: why do you read ebooks? Do you ever read print-based ebooks? If so, what makes you choose to read a digital versus a print-based format? Do you find reading an ebook comfortable? What device do you usually use to read an ebook? Why do you use that device? So semi-structured interview questions may be open or close-ended. Some close-ended questions that you might ask include the following: have you used any kind of device for reading ebooks before? Would you like to read an ebook using this device? In your opinion, is the device easy to handle? Some open-ended questions with follow-on probes include the following: what do you like most about the device? Why? What do you like the least about the device? Why? Please give me an example whether the device was comfortable or difficult to handle. So again, guys, these are the questions on the basic of conversation. Asking questions. There's two questions actually, open-ended and close-ended. So here are an example of interview question. Here, yeah, why? If yes, for yes, you're gonna choose this predefined alternative. Now, running the interview. Before starting the interview, it is important to check that the interviewee has received any project information. Sheet and has completed the informed consent for interviews that you just to ask. Let me just. Let's back up. Before starting the interview, it is important to check that the interviewee has received and read any project information sheet and has completed the information consent form. Interviewees must be given the chance to ask any questions they have regarding any aspect of the process. Can often be done through email exchange before the day of the interview, but can also be confirmed at the start of the interview. During the interview, it's important to listen more than talk, to respond with sympathy but without bias, and to enjoy the exchange. An introduction, so sympathy, guys. So you're trying to like agree with the customer, not like expecting a predefined, answer from them. So because what's the purpose of you doing the interview if you know already the answer? An introduction in which the interviewer introduce themselves and explain why they are doing the interview. Documentation for the interview is checked, and the interviewer is given a chance to ask questions and agree to being recorded. This should be exactly the same for each interviewee. A warm-up session where straightforward questions come first. This may include questions about demographic information, such as what are the country do you live in. A main session in which the questions are presented in a logical sequence with more probing ones at the end. In a semi-structured interview, the order of questions may vary between participants depending on the course of conversation, how much probing is done, and what seems more natural. So, to determine what seems to the questions to ask in a semi-structured, you ask yourself, what is more natural? Is it this? Is that? Is different for different people. A cooling off period consisting of a few straight or forward questions. Is there anything else? A closing session in which the interviewer thanks the interviewee and stop any recording signaling that interview has ended. So you close the equipment, etc. It's kind of like in face-to-face conversation where you start and then you finish, right? So it's the same principles. So conducting interviews remotely, I guess we're gonna stop here. So yeah, we'll stop here and then we'll come back later.